Hi, One Lit teacher here to talk about the characters and conflicts in Romeo and Juliet. There's an awful lot of information in this presentation, so I want to invite you to stop at any time to look at some of the supporting quotes and ideas that I've collected for you, as I won't be able to read them all out loud. Also, keep in mind that there are some spoilers here if you have not finished reading the play or finished watching it, so you may want to stop after the next slide and come back to it later if you haven't experienced the whole play yet. So first of all, very important to note that Shakespeare has set up a parallel structure through the characters in the play, and this helps with the conflict. There are two households, both alike in dignity, the Montagues and the Capulets. Each has a teenage child, Romeo Montague, Juliet Capulet, and on each side there is a set of parents who play a role in the play, a cousin who plays an important role in the play, and some servants. So the nurse is a surrogate mother and confidant to Juliet, and she has her own servant Peter who accompanies her about town. And then there are some important minor servants, Balthasar and Abraham, balanced by Samson and Gregory, who in fact meet up in the very first scene and elsewhere throughout the play. Now you might be looking at my chart and thinking, it's a little imbalanced actually, but there is a method to my madness in creating the chart this way, because Romeo also has a confidant, but he is not technically part of the house of Montague. He doesn't live with the Montagues. Friar Lawrence, though, is quite clearly the closest character to Romeo in the play and knows about his changing love life, for example. The friar also has an assistant, Friar John. And then there is a character on either side of the chart here in either household who is related to Prince Aeschylus. And this is important because the prince keeps it in mind when he lays out the punishments throughout the play. As he says at the end, he has lost a brace of kinsmen. And so this is an important factor. Mercutio is best friend to Romeo and again a kinsman to the prince, and Count Paris is a suitor for Juliet and also a relative or kinsman to the prince. The prince is really the only neutral or sort of objective character in this play and on the character list structure. So if you haven't finished reading the play, you may want to stop here and come back later. If you have, then keep going and I will show you in pairs some of the qualities of the different characters. Romeo enjoys privilege as a male offspring of a wealthy family. He wanders the streets of Verona at will. He is moody and depressed, and his age in the play is unspecified. His father points out his moodiness when he talks to Benvolio about finding out what was wrong with his son. Romeo loves the idea of love, and he falls in love quickly, and he always wants what he cannot have. So remember, it's important to remember that Rosaline is Romeo's first love in this play, not Juliet. They are both Capulets, which is what Romeo can't have. He could say, oh, I'm not going there, moving on, but he never does that. The friar says, young men's love then lies not truly in their hearts, but in their eyes, and I believe that's true. Romeo, again, wants what he can't have. He says, my life is my foe's debt, instead of choosing free will. He moves forward with this ill-fated love for a Capulet. He is a Petrarchan lover. I have a whole video dedicated to Romeo as a Petrarchan lover on my YouTube channel, One Lit Teacher, but just in brief here, he is a poet. He has his head in the clouds. He is frequently associated with Cupid because he has been struck by Cupid's arrow. He is distant from his parents and friends, but he confides in Friar Lawrence and tells only the friar about Juliet. He believes in fate, saying on his way to the party, my mind must give some consequence yet hanging in the stars. Juliet, on the other hand, is the sheltered female child of the Capulets, the only surviving child of this wealthy family, always chaperoned by the nurse, as pointed out by the chorus and prologue to Act 2. She is only 13 years old, important to remember this, and Capulet tells Paris this when Paris comes with his marriage suit. And Lady Capulet and the nurse also discuss this. She is naive and has a really immature view of love. And I see this throughout the play, but perhaps not more poignantly than when the nurse tells Romeo about the cute little second grade rhymes that Juliet has dreamed up with words that start with the same letter as Romeo's name. She is closer to the nurse than her own parents. The nurse has breastfed her and raised her, and she tells only the nurse about Romeo. She was obedient before meeting Romeo, says she won't look any further than the parents want her to for love, but then breaks that right away. She believes in fate also. She tells the nurse at the party, go ask his name. If he be Mariad, my grave is like to be my wedding bed. I'm going to sum up these two as Romeo is a melodramatic drama queen, and Juliet really is an extremely childish young girl, not a young lady who is ready to be married. Sorry, but those are the facts. All right, the parents, the Montagues. They have some good qualities, but also some bad ones. Montague is concerned, they are both concerned about their son's mental health and ask Benvolio for help in finding out what's wrong. They don't know how to talk to him. They're very distant. They don't know about Rosaline or Juliet. The father sets a bad example in being willing to fight instantly with the Montagues, or with the Capulets, at the drop of a pin. He is grief-stricken, though, at the end, and so is his wife. In fact, he reports that she has died over the loss of her son. At the end, the father finally turns the other cheek, and I'm going to point that out when I point out the similar idea about Capulet in just a moment. The Capulets have suffered the ravages of infant mortality. Earth hath swallowed all my hopes but she, Capulet tells Paris. The mother has been married off young, and that might be the explanation for why she's aloof and cold. She has no idea how to talk to her own daughter, and she finally lets the nurse do it for her. The father says of her, too soon marred are those too early made. The father at first is genuinely concerned about the daughter not wanting to marry her off right away, but getting Paris to woo her first and earn her heart. The father also sets a bad example, asking for his sword right away and wanting to go fight the Montagues. He is quick-tempered and cruel. We can see this in Act 3, Scene 5, where he reels off a whole list of horrible Shakespearean insults toward his daughter. But he also is grief-stricken and resigned to peace at the end. At the end, Capulet says, "O brother Montague, give me thy hand. This is my daughter's jointure, for no more can I demand." And Montague says, "But I can give thee more, for I will ray her statue in pure gold, that whilst Verona by that name is known, there shall no figure at such rate be set as that of true and faithful Juliet." And so while they make good in the end, I'm going to sum them up just as pretty horrible, terrible parents. Sorry. Okay, moving on. The cousins. Benvolio, a Montague, cousin and friend to Romeo, hangs out with Romeo, attends dances, and so on. He wants to help. He tells Romeo to play the field, look around, I'll make thee think thy swan a crow. He is a peacekeeper. He says, "I do but keep the peace, put up thy sword, or manage it to part these men with me." He is well respected and trusted around Verona. In fact, after the street fights, the prince asks him to tell his objective version of the fights, even though he is a Montague. His name means good wish or goodwill. Anything bene in Latin is good. Then there's Tybalt, cousin to Romeo. He is incensed that Romeo has dared to appear at the Capulet feast. He has a chip on his shoulder. His uncle says, "You are a saucy boy." He is quick to fight, so when Benvolio doesn't want to fight, he says, "What? Drawn and talk of peace? I hate the word as I hate hell, all Montagues and thee. Have at thee, coward." He has a reputation as an excellent duelist. He is more than Prince of Cats. He is in the very first house in the second cause, a duelist. His name comes from a cat in the adage, a folktale. He is a rat catcher, and the name Tybalt means bold person. These cousins are foil characters, and that's an important convention that Shakespeare uses here. Foil characters are characters who are character opposites, and examining the qualities of one then sets off, through opposition, the qualities of the other. The idea of foil characters, or the name of it, comes from the tradition of setting off jewels against foil or metal to make them shine. It also kind of reminds me of how there's a stage convention of using foils in sword fighting or dueling on stage. And so the characters sometimes literally oppose each other, but throughout the play or in a novel, if there are foil characters, they oppose each other through all of their character traits, or at least their most important ones. All right, moving on. The confidants. Friar Lawrence is a man of God, a Franciscan priest, a botanist who's collecting plants for potions when we first meet him, privy to Romeo's love life and all of its changes. He knows that Romeo is not truly in love, but the love is just in his eyes. He has good intentions, but come on, he acts very foolishly, marrying Romeo off without telling Romeo's parents, not telling the Capulets, giving Juliet that potion. That's ridiculous. And he is more concerned at the end about covering for himself than Juliet's safety and well-being. In fact, he says he'll hide her in a sisterhood of holy nuns and never tell that she was really alive. His judgment is overvalued by Romeo, Juliet, and the nurse. The nurse says, "Oh, I could have stayed here all night to hear good counsel." I don't think so. But then that's the nurse. She is a wet nurse and a nanny to Juliet, and she lost her own child, which is probably why she is so capable of taking care of her in this way and loving her. She wants Juliet to be happy, and this balances off Lady Capulet's desire for Juliet to have her status raised and her wealth bolstered. The nurse says, "Go, girl, seek happy nights to happy days." She also has good intentions, but acts foolishly along with Friar Lawrence in concealing the things that she should tell the parents of this young girl. The nurse is uneducated, speaks in crude prose that is riddled with malapropisms, like asking Romeo for some confidence instead of a conference. This is a malapropism. I talk about these kinds of language examples in my video about the language of Romeo and Juliet on One Lit Teacher. The nurse is a vehicle for some comic relief in the play, along with the clown character Peter, and this is evidenced in multiple places, but one of them is in the street scene where she is looking for Romeo and runs into Benvolio and Mercutio. These two, my assessment, terrible advisors. Moving on. Unwitting casualties of this terrible advice. Mercutio, kinsman to the prince. That relationship, again, is something the prince considers when sentencing Romeo to banishment instead of execution. He is Romeo's best friend, and Tybalt's murder of Mercutio provokes Romeo to fight. Mercutio is not up to date on Romeo's love life. That's important because it turns into a critical error in the play. He is a clown who's very punny, even joking around in his last breaths. He has extreme mood swings. You just have to look at the Queen Mab speech to get that. He defends Romeo's honor when Romeo won't fight for himself. He is the victim of Tybalt and also of Romeo's lack of communication. Again, he never knew why Romeo wouldn't fight Tybalt. His name is related to the Roman god Mercury, the messenger god and god of travelers, tricksters, and thieves. He is mercurial, like mercury in a thermometer, which fluctuates throughout the day. Paris is also kinsman to Prince Aeschylus, and he is a stock character. The audience learns only about his status, his wealth, and his intentions to marry. He is not well developed, but he is wealthy and a fiancé to Juliet. He is unaware of Juliet's marriage to Romeo, so he's another victim of the secrets kept by the friar and the nurse. So when Romeo kills him at the end of the play, you just have to feel terribly sorry for him. His only crime is not knowing and just being grief-stricken over Juliet. He also is the victim of Romeo's lack of communication and Romeo's sword at the monument. He is named after Paris of the Greek myth, who is duped into choosing Aphrodite as the most beautiful goddess in the world in exchange for the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen, who is already married. So that kind of is mirrored here in Juliet's already being married to Romeo. This is part of the senseless death toll in the play, these two characters. All right, then we have some important conflicts connected to those characters. There is, of course, this ancient feud, which is an external conflict between the Montagues and the Capulets. There is foolish pride, an internal conflict between the Montagues and the Capulets. Tybalt and Mercutio, for example, who must fight to save face. There is unrequited love, an internal conflict on the part of Romeo, for example, when he's pining for Rosaline, who won't love him back because she's sworn to live chaste. There is self-destructive behavior in this play, internal conflict running throughout. Depression, Romeo and Juliet, both. They have suicidal thoughts, which is an important idea in this play that we shouldn't just brush over. They need some mental health counseling. And they both are self-destructive in wanting what is unattainable and dangerous for both of them throughout the play. My source for the quotes that you see and hear in this video is the Folger Shakespeare online version of Romeo and Juliet. I suggest that you go check it out. It's very helpful. If you found this video useful, you should check out my other videos on Romeo and Juliet, as well as on the poems of Shakespeare, John Donne, and others, and lots of other literary topics that I have covered and will continue to cover on my YouTube channel, One Lit Teacher. Please subscribe to One Lit Teacher. Thanks.